Good afternoon and welcome to Readings from Hubble's Lake. Today's story is one of the Beverly Cleary series called Ramona. And the book I'm reading from is the very first in the series called Ramona and Beezus. Ramona is a little girl who is very smart and has all kinds of great ideas that land her in all kinds of trouble. This has been a favorite series for me to read to my own children, but also to read to classes throughout the years. So grab your favorite blanket. This one's mine. Snuggle up. If you have a pad of paper and want to draw a picture, I would love to see it. You can send it to our website at hubbleslakeresort.ca. Probably the office or the info link. And I would love to see it. So now we'll begin. Chapter 1, Beezus and Ramona. Beatrice Quimby's biggest problem was her little sister Ramona. Beatrice, or Beezus, as everyone called her because that was what Ramona had called her when she first learned to talk, knew other 9-year-old girls who had little sisters who went to nursery school. But she did not know anyone with a sister like Ramona. Beezus felt that the biggest trouble with 4-year-old Ramona was that she was just plain exasperating. If Ramona drank lemonade through a straw, she blew into the straw as hard as she could to see what would happen. If she played with her finger paints in the front yard, she wiped her hands on the neighbor's cat. That was the exasperating sort of things that Ramona did. And then there was the way she behaved about her favorite book. It all began one afternoon when Beezus was sitting in her father's big chair embroidering a laughing tea kettle on a potholder for one of her aunts for Christmas. She was trying to embroider this one neatly because she planned to give it to Aunt Beatrice, who was Mother's younger sister and Beezus's most special aunt. With gray thread, Beezus carefully outlined the steam coming from the tea kettle's spout, and thought about her pretty young aunt, who was always so happy and so understanding. No wonder she was Mother's favorite sister. Beezus hoped to be like Aunt Beatrice when she grew up. She wanted to be a 4th grade teacher and drive a yellow convertible and live in an apartment house with an elevator and a buzzer that opened the front door. Because she was named after Aunt Beatrice, Beezus felt that she might be like her in other ways too. While Beezus was sewing, Ramona, holding a mouth organ right in her teeth, was riding around the living room on her tricycle. Since she needed both hands to steer her tricycle, she could blow in and out only on one note. This made the harmonica sound as though it was groaning, oh dear, over and over and over again. Beezus tried to pay no attention. She tied a small knot in the end of the piece of red thread to embroider the tea kettle's laughing mouth. Conceal a knot as you would a secret, Grandma always said. Inhaling and exhaling into her mouth organ, Ramona closed her eyes and tried to pedal around the coffee table without looking. Ramona, cried Beezus, watch where you're going. When Ramona crashed into the coffee table, she opened her eyes again. Oh dear, moaned the harmonica. Around and around and around and around pedaled Ramona, inhaling and exhaling. Beezus looked up from the potholder. Ramona, why don't you play with Bendix for a while? Bendix was Ramona's favorite doll. Ramona thought Bendix was the most beautiful name in all of the world. Ramona took the harmonica out of her mouth. No, she said, read my Scoopy book to me. Oh, Ramona. Not Scoopy, protested Beezus. We've read Scoopy so many times. Instead of answering, Ramona put her harmonica between her teeth again and pedaled around the room, inhaling and exhaling. Beezus had to lift her feet every time Ramona rode by. The knot in Beezus's thread pulled through the material of her potholder, and she gave up trying to conceal it as she would a secret and tied a bigger knot. Finally, tired of trying to keep her feet out of Ramona's way, she put down her embroidery. All right, Ramona, she said. If I read about Scoopy, Will you stop riding your tricycle around the living room and making so much noise? Yes, said Ramona, and she climbed off her tricycle. She was into the bedroom she shared with Beezus and returned with a battered, dog-eared, sticky book, which she handed to Beezus. Then she climbed into a big chair beside Beezus and waited expectantly. Reflecting that Ramona had always managed to get her own way, Beezus gingerly took the book and looked at it with a great feeling of dislike. It was called The Littlest Steam Shovel. On the cover was a picture of a steam shovel with big tears coming out of its eyes. How could a steam shovel have eyes? Beezus thought, and scarcely looking at the words, began for what seemed like the 100th or maybe the 1,000th time. Once there was a little steam shovel named Scoopy. One day Scoopy said, "I do not want to be a steam shovel. I want to be a bulldozer." "You skipped," interrupted Ramona. "No, I didn't," said Beezus. "Yes, you did," insisted Ramona. "You are supposed to say, 'I want to be a big bulldozer.'" "Oh, all right," said Beezus crossly. "I want to be a big bulldozer." Ramona smiled contentedly, and Beezus continued reading. "Grrr," said Scoopy, doing his best to sound like a bulldozer. Beezus read on through Scoopy's failure to be a bulldozer. She read about Scoopy's wanting to be a trolley bus. "Beep, beep," honked Ramona. "Or a locomotive. Ahooey, ahooey," wailed Ramona. "Or a pile driver. Clunk, clunk," shouted Ramona. Beezus was glad when she finally reached the end of the story, and Scoopy learned it was best for little steam shovels to be steam shovels. "There," she said with relief, and she closed the book. She always felt foolish trying to make noises like machinery. "Clunk, clunk," yelled Ramona, jumping down from the chair. She pulled the harmonica out of her pocket and climbed on her tricycle. "Oh dear, oh dear," she inhaled and exhaled, inhaled and exhaled. "Ramona," cried Beezus, "you promised you'd stop if I read Scoopy to you." "I did stop," said Ramona, when she had taken the harmonica out of her mouth. "Now read it again." "Ramona Geraldine Quimby," Beezus began and stopped. It was useless to argue with Ramona. She wouldn't pay any attention. "Why do you like that story anyway?" Beezus asked. "Steam shovels can't talk, and I feel silly trying to make all those noises." "I don't," said Ramona, and she wailed, "Ahooey, ahooey," with great feeling before she put her harmonica back in her mouth. Beezus watched her little sister pedal furiously around the living room, inhaling and exhaling. Why did she have to like a book about a steam shovel anyway? Girls weren't supposed to like machinery. Why couldn't she like something quiet like Peter Rabbit? Mother, who had bought the littlest steam shovel at the supermarket to keep Ramona quiet one day while she shopped, was so tired of Scoopy that she always managed to be too busy to read to Ramona. Father came right out and said he was fed up with frustrated steam shovels and he would not read that book to Ramona, and furthermore, no one else was to read it while he was in the house. And that was that. So only Beezus was left to read Scoopy to Ramona. Plainly, something had to be done, and it was up to Beezus to do it. But what? Arguing with Ramona was just a waste of time. So was appealing to her better nature. The best thing to do with Ramona, Beezus had learned, was to think up something to take place of whatever her mind was fixed upon. And what could take the place of the littlest steam shovel? Another book, of course. A better book, and the place to find that was certainly the library. "Ramona, how would you like me to take you to the library to find a different book?" Beezus asked. She really enjoyed taking Ramona places, which of course was quite different from wanting to go someplace herself and having Ramona insist on tagging along. For a moment, Ramona was undecided. Plainly, she was torn between wanting the little steam shovel read aloud again for the pleasure of going out with Beezus. "Okay," she agreed to at last. "Get your sweater while I tell Mother," said Beezus. "Clunk, clunk," shouted Ramona happily. When Ramona appeared with her sweater, Beezus stared at her in dismay. Oh no, she thought. She can't wear those to the library. On her head, Ramona wore a circle of cardboard with 2 long paper ears attached. The insides of the ears were colored with pink crayon, Ramona's work at nursery school. "I'm the Easter Bunny," announced Ramona. "Mother," wailed Beezus, "you aren't going to let her wear those awful ears to the library." "Why, I don't see why not." Mother sounded surprised that Beezus should object to Ramona's ears. "They look silly. And whoever heard of an Easter Bunny in September?" Beezus complained. As Ramona hopped up and down to make her ears flop, "I just hope we don't meet anyone we know," Beezus thought, and they headed out the front door. But the girls had no sooner left the house when they saw Mrs. Whizzer, an old lady who lived on the next block, coming toward them with a friend. It was too late to turn back. Mrs. Whizzer had seen them and was waving. "Well, hello there, Beatrice," Mrs. Whizzer said, when they met. "I see that you have a dear little bunny with you today." Yes." Beezus really didn't know what else to say. Ramona obligingly hopped up and down to make her ears flop. Mrs. Whizzer said to her friend, as if Beezus and Ramona couldn't hear, "Isn't she adorable?" Both children knew who Mrs. Whizzer was talking about. If she had been talking about Beezus, she would have said something quite different. Such a nice girl, probably. A sweet child. Adorable? Never. "Just look at those eyes," said Mrs. Whizzer. Ramona beamed. She knew whose eyes they were talking about. Beezus knew too, but she didn't care. Mother said blue eyes were just as pretty as brown. Mrs. Whizzer leaned over to Ramona. "What color are your eyes, sweetheart?" she asked. "Brown and white," said Ramona promptly. "Brown and white eyes," exclaimed the friend. "Isn't that cunning?" Beezus had thought it was cunning the first time she heard Ramona say it about a year ago. Since then, she had given up trying to explain to Ramona that she wasn't supposed to say she had brown and white eyes, because Ramona always answered, "My eyes are brown and white." And Beezus had to admit that, in a way, they were. "And what is that little bunny's name?" asked Mrs. Whizzer's friend. "My name is Ramona Geraldine Quimby," answered Ramona, and then she added generously, "My sister's name is Beezus." "Beezus," explained the lady. "What an odd name. Is it French?" "Oh, no," said Beezus, wishing, as so often she did, that she had a more common nickname, like Betty or Patsy. She explained as quickly as she could how she happened to be called Beezus. Ramona did not like to lose the attention of her audience. She hitched up one leg of her overalls and raised her knee. "See my scab?" she said proudly. "I fell down and hurt my knee and it bled." "Ramona!" Beezus was horrified. "You're not supposed to show people your scabs." "Why?" said Ramona. That was one of the most exasperating things about Ramona. She never seemed to understand what she was not supposed to do. "It is a very nice scab," said Mrs. Whizzer's friend, but she did not look as if she really thought it was very nice. "Well, we must be going," said Miss Whizzer. "Goodbye, Mrs. Whizzer," said Beatrice politely, and hoped that if they met anyone else on the way to the library, that they knew she could somehow manage to hide Ramona behind a bush. "Bye-bye, Ramona," said Mrs. Whizzer. "Goodbye," said Ramona, and Beezus knew she felt that a girl that was 4 years old was much too grown up to say bye-bye. Except for holding Ramona's hand crossing streets, Beezus lingered behind her the rest of the way to the library. She hoped that all the people who stopped and smiled at Ramona would not think that they were together. When they reached the Glenwood Branch Library, she said, "Ramona, wouldn't you like me to carry your ears for you now?" "No," said Ramona flatly. Inside the library, Beezus hurried Ramona into the boys and girls section and seated her in the little chair in front of the picture books. "See, Ramona," she whispered. "Here's a book about a duck. Wouldn't you like that?" "No," said Ramona in a loud voice. Beezus's face turned red with embarrassment when everyone in the library looked at Ramona's ears and smiled. "Shh," she whispered, as Miss Griever, The grown-ups librarian frowned in her direction. You're only supposed to speak quietly in the library. Beezus selected another book. Look, Ramona, here's a funny story about a kitten that falls into a goldfish bowl. Wouldn't you like that? No, said Ramona in a loud whisper. I want to find my own book. If only Mrs. Evans, the children's librarian, were here. She would know how to select a book for Ramona. Beezus noticed Mrs. Griever, glanced disapprovingly in their direction while the other grown-ups watched Ramona and smiled. All right, you can look, Beezus agreed. To keep Ramona quiet, I'll go find a book for myself. When Beezus selected her book, she returned to the picture book section where she found Ramona sitting on the bench with both arms clasped around a big flat book. I found my book, she said, and she held it up for Beezus to see. On the cover was a picture of a steam shovel with its jaws full of rocks. The title was Big Steve, the Steam Shovel. Oh, Ramona, whispered Beezus in dismay. You don't want that book. I do too, insisted Ramona, forgetting to whisper. You told me I could pick out my own book. Under the disapproving stare of Miss Griever, Beezus gave up. Ramona was right. Beezus looked at distaste with the big orange-colored book in its stout library binding. At least it would be due in 2 weeks. But Beezus did not feel very happy at the thought of 2 more weeks of steam shovels, and it just went to show how Ramona always got her own way. Beezus took her book and Ramona to Miss Griever's desk. Is this where you pay for the books? Said Ramona. We don't have to pay for these books, said Beezus. Are you going to charge them? Ramona asked. Beezus pulled her library card out of her sweater pocket. I show this card to the lady and she lets us keep the books for 2 weeks. A library isn't like a store where you buy things. Ramona looked as if she did not understand. I want a card, she said. You have to be able to write your own name before you can have a library card. Beezus explained. I can write my own name, said Ramona. Oh, Ramona, you can't either. Perhaps she really does know how to write her name, said Miss Griever, and she took a card out of her desk. Beezus watched doubtfully while Miss Griever asked Ramona her name and age. Then the librarian asked Ramona what her father's occupation was. When Ramona didn't understand, she asked, What kind of work does your father do? He mows the lawn, said Ramona promptly. The librarian laughed. I mean, how does he earn his living? Somehow Beezus did not like to have Miss Griever laugh at her little sister. After all, how could Ramona be expected to know what their father did? He works for Pacific Gas and Electric Company, Beezus told the librarian. Miss Griever wrote this down on the card and shoved it across the desk to Ramona. Write your name on this line. Nothing daunted, Ramona grasped the pencil in her fist, and she bore down so hard that the tip smashed off the end of the lead, but she wrote on, and when she laid down her pencil, Beezus picked up the card to see what she had written, and on the card was filled with scribbles. That's my name, said Ramona proudly. It's just scribbling, Beezus told her. It is too my name, insisted Ramona, while Miss Griever quietly dropped the card in the wastebasket. I've watched you write, and I know how. Here, Ramona, you can hold on to my card. Beezus tried to be comforting. You can pretend it's yours. Ramona brightened at this, and Miss Griever checked out the books on Beezus's card. As soon as they got home, Ramona demanded, Read my new book to me. And so Beezus began. Big Steve was a steam shovel. He was the biggest steam shovel in the whole city. And when she finished the book, she had to admit she did like Big Steve better than Scoopy. His only sound effects were tooting and growling. He tooted and growled in big letters on every page. Big Steve did not shed tears, and he did not want to be a pile driver. He worked hard at being a steam shovel, and by the end of the book, Beezus had actually learned a lot about steam shovels. Unfortunately, she did not really want to learn about steam shovels. Oh well, she guessed she could stand another 2 weeks of Big Steve. "Read it again," said Ramona enthusiastically. "I like Big Steve. He's better than Scoopy." "How would you like me to show you how to write your name?" Beezus asked, hoping to divert Ramona from the idea of steam shovel books. "Okay," agreed Ramona. Beezus found a pencil and wrote Ramona in big, careful letters across the top of the paper. Ramona studied it critically. "I don't like it," she said at last. "But that is the way your name is spelled," said Beezus. "You didn't make dots and lines," said Ramona. Seizing the pencil, she wrote with scribbles, IITTIITMMMIII. "But Ramona, you don't understand." Beezus took the pencil and wrote her own name on the paper. "You've seen me write Beatrice, which has an I and a T in it, like that. You don't have an I or a T in your name, because it isn't spelled that way." Ramona looked skeptical. She grabbed the pencil and wrote with a flourish, IIITITTITTITTIYU. "That is my name because I like it," she announced. "I like to make dots and I like to make lines." Lying flat on her stomach on the floor, she proceeded to fill the paper with I's and T's. "But Ramona, no one's name is spelled with just..." Beezus stopped. What was the use? Trying to explain spelling and writing to Ramona was altogether too complicated. Everything became difficult with Ramona around, even an easy thing like taking a book to a library. Well, if Ramona was happy thinking her name was spelled with I's and T's, she could just go ahead and think it. The next 2 weeks were fairly peaceful. Mother and Father soon tired of tooting and growling, and like Beezus, they looked forward to the day Big Steve was due at the library. Father even tried to hide the book behind the radio, but Ramona soon found it. Beezus was happy that one part of her plan had worked. Ramona had forgotten the littlest steam shovel. Now she had a better book. On Ramona's second trip to the library, perhaps Miss Evans could find a book that might make her forget steam shovels entirely. As for Ramona, she was perfectly happy. She had 3 people to read aloud a book she liked, and she spent much of her time covering sheets of paper with I's and T's. Sometimes she wrote in pencil, sometimes she wrote with crayon, and once she wrote with ink, until Mom caught her. Finally, to the relief of the rest of the family, the day came when Big Steve had to be returned. "Come on, Ramona," said Beezus. "It's time to go to the library for another book." "I have a book," said Ramona, who was lying on her stomach, writing her version of her name on a piece of paper with purple crayon. "No, it belongs to the library," Beezus explained, glad that for once Ramona couldn't possibly get her own way. "It's my book," said Ramona, crossing several T's with flourish. "Beezus is right, dear," observed Mother. "Run along and get Big Steve." Ramona looked sulky, but she went into her bedroom. In a few minutes, she appeared with Big Steve in hand and a satisfied expression on her face. "It's my book," she announced. "I wrote my name in it." Mother looked alarmed. "What do you mean, Ramona?" "Let me see." She took the book and she opened it. Every page in the book was covered with enormous purple I's and T's in Ramona's very best handwriting. "Mother!" cried Beezus. "Look what she's done, and in crayon so it won't erase." "Ramona Quimby," said Mother, "you are a very naughty girl. Why did you do a thing like that?" "It's my book," Ramona said stubbornly. "I like it." "Mother, what am I going to do?" Beezus demanded. "It's checked out on my card and I'm responsible. They won't let me take out any more books from the library, and I won't have anything to read, and it will all be Ramona's fault. She's always spoiling my fun, and it's not fair." Beezus didn't know what she would do without her library card. She couldn't get along without library books. She just couldn't. That's it. I did not spoil your fun, stormed Ramona. You have all the fun. I can't read, and it isn't fair. Ramona's words ended with a howl, and she buried her face in Mother's skirt. I couldn't read when I was your age, and I didn't have someone to read to me all the time. So it is too fair, said Beezus. You always get your own way, because you're the youngest. I do not, shouted Ramona, and you don't read all the time. You're mean. I am not mean, Beezus shouted back. Children, cried Mother, stop it, both of you. Ramona, you were a very naughty girl. A loud sniff came from Ramona. And Beezus, her mother continued, the library will not take your card away from you. If you get my purse, I will give you some money to pay for the damage to the book. Take Ramona along with you. Explain what happened, and the librarian will tell you how much to pay. This made Beezus feel better. Ramona sulked all the way to the library, but when they got there, Beezus was pleased to see that Miss Evans, the children's librarian, was sitting behind the desk. Miss Evans was the kind of librarian who would understand about little sisters. Hello, Beatrice, said Miss Evans. Is this your little sister I've heard so much about? Beezus wondered what Miss Evans had heard about Ramona. Yes, this is Ramona, she said, and she went on hesitantly. And Miss Evans, I'm a bad girl, interrupted Ramona, smiling winningly at the librarian. Oh, you are? Said Miss Evans. What did you do? I wrote in a book, said Ramona, not in the least bit ashamed. I wrote in purple crayon, and it will never, never, ever erase. Never, 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 never. Embarrassed, Beezus handed the book to Miss Evans, Big Steve, the steam shovel. Mother gave me money to pay for the damage, she explained. The librarian turned the pages of the book. Well, you didn't miss a page, did you? She finally said to Ramona. No, said Ramona. She was pleased with herself. And it will never, never... I am awfully sorry, interrupted Beezus. After this, I will try to keep our library books where she cannot reach them. Miss Evans consulted a file of little cards in the drawer. Since every page in the book was damaged and the library can no longer use it, I will have to ask you to pay for the whole book. I'm sorry, but this is the rule. It will cost you $2.50. $2.50! What a lot of things that could have bought, Beezus reflected as she pulled 3 folded dollar bills out of the pocket and handed them to the librarian. Miss Evans put the money in the drawer and gave her 50 cents in change. Then Miss Evans took a rubber stamp and stamped something inside the book. By twisting her head around, Beezus could see that the word was discarded. There, Miss Evans said, pushing the book across the desk. You have paid for it, and now it's yours. Beezus stared at the librarian. You mean to keep? That's right, answered Miss Evans. Ramona grabbed the book. It's mine. I told you it was mine. Then she turned to Beezus and said triumphantly, You said people didn't buy books at the library, and now you just bought me one. Buying a book and paying for damage are not the same things, Ramona, said Miss Evans. Beezus could see that Ramona didn't care. The book was hers, wasn't it? It was paid for, and she could keep it. And that's not fair, thought Beezus. Ramona shouldn't get her own way when she'd been bad. But Miss Evans, protested Beezus, if she spoils a book, she shouldn't get to keep it. Now every time she finds a book she likes, she will... Beezus didn't go on. She knew very well what Ramona would do, but she wasn't going to say it out loud in front of her. I see what you mean, Miss Evans looked thoughtfully. Give me the book, Ramona, she said. Doubtfully, Ramona handed her the book. Ramona, do you have your own library card? Asked Miss Evans. Ramona shook her head. Then Beezus must have taken the book out on her card, said Miss Evans. So this book belongs to Beezus. Why, of course. Why hadn't she thought of that before? It was her book, not Ramona's. Oh, thank you, said Beezus gratefully, as Miss Evans handed the book back to her. She could do anything she wanted with it. For once, Ramona didn't know what to say. She scowled, and she looked as if she was building up to a tantrum. "You've got to read it to me," she said at last. "Not unless I feel like it," said Beezus. "After all, it's my book." She couldn't resist adding that. "That's no fair." Ramona looked as if she was about to howl. "It is too fair," said Beezus calmly. "And if you have a tantrum, I won't read to you at all." Ramona thought. Suddenly, as if she had decided Beezus meant what she said, Ramona stopped scowling. "Okay," she said cheerfully. Beezus watched her carefully for a moment. Yes, she really was being agreeable, thought Beezus with a great feeling of relief. And now she did not have to read Big Steve unless she wanted to. Beezus felt she wouldn't mind reading it once in a while. "Come on, Ramona," she said. "Maybe I'll have time to read to you before Father comes home." "Okay," said Ramona happily as she took Beezus's hand. Miss Evans smiled at the girls as they started to leave. "Good luck, Beatrice," she said. And that's the end of chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed the story today. And keep a look on the website. There'll be more links coming up soon.